Hey now, welcome to another Coach Vass football video. Today I'm going to take you through what is a bonus fire zone, an explanation of the whip fire zone with its coverage and pressure, explanations in film of what the pressure does and why it's so effective, including the potential to get an inside linebacker one-on-one with a running back while playing a variation of match cover 3, potential to overload the protection and get a free running inside backer or D-end if the offense releases 5 receivers in the pattern, a good solid empty check, good for plays where the offense is trying to influence the defense by making them think it's a different play. So play action, faking the run, throwing a pass, draw, making them think it's pass, run. You know what I'm talking about. Also, it's great versus a lot of 10 and 11 personnel run plays. Before we get started, make sure you smash that subscribe button. That's right. And turn on notifications by pressing the little bell. All right, so what the hell is a bonus fire zone? It's a style of pressure that's been used in the NFL for over a decade, but it almost always gets overlooked because it isn't fancy or exotic. It's simple yet effective, and most people think it's something different than it actually is. Whip fire zone can be misleading because most people think when they hear fire zone, it's a 5-man rush. This is not the case with whip fire zone. You're only bringing 4. So when most people see it, they think it's a creeper, which is a zone replace pressure popularized by Dave Aranda. He's not your first guy to do it, but that's where that name has come from, where you have a non-traditional second or third level defender rushing, i.e. a linebacker, safety, or corner, and a traditional first level rusher, a D-end or outside backer on the ball, drops into coverage versus pass. You can also run those by bringing 2 people and dropping 2 people, but the reality is you're bringing 4, you're dropping 7. But what whip is, it's actually a hybrid of the two. Fire zones are 5-man pressures that were first run, and this is debated, by Bill Arnsparger and later perfected and popularized by Don Capers and Dick LeBeau. The original concept was that defensive coordinators wanted to bring pressure and overload protections, but they didn't want to be stuck playing man coverage. That was easy for offenses like the West Coast offense to spot pre-snap and pick apart or use man beaters, etc. So instead of playing man free or cover 0, LeBeau and others devised ways to play a cover 3 variation with 3 underneath droppers that would play kind of like zone, but kind of match the pattern, and you could get eyes on the football. Fire zones took every level of football by storm and became a great way to attack offenses that were in 21 and 12 personnel, and also 11. They got a little hairy when offenses got into 4 wides because you were having issues where D-ends were having to walk out and drop. So they're really good versus 12, 21, and used to be 11. And when I say used to be 11, I'm talking under center, inside and outside zone, boot, stuff like that. The spread formations, as I mentioned, the spacing became an issue. And what ended up happening is most defenses, when they played fire zones into spread formations, they said, well, let's just play it like man. So a lot of coordinators like myself got into odd fronts where you really haven't having to drop anybody, bring 5 guys, play man free. It was easy. Again, you had to play it like man because if you just dropped to spots with the spread formations, you would open up giant holes with only 3 guys underneath. So now you're running a pressure that you wanted zone elements that has to play almost exactly like man. So it just didn't make any sense. So guys like Dave Aranda, Greg Brown, who's coached everywhere and was most popular at the Colorado Buffaloes, Gary Patterson, they started running these zone replace pressures as a way to combat the spacing issues. They started running similar pressure patterns, but they would drop the defensive lineman if only one guy was going. It was a fantastic approach and has been very successful at the college level, used by some of the best defenses in all of football. There are a few slight issues, though, for guys like myself who want to play tight coverage when you use these quote-unquote creepers, as Coach Aranda calls them. On third down, when defenses are more likely to run 2 high coverage variants, they're not so pronounced. But when you're in first and second down and you're using cover 3 as the foundation, you can really see the issues. First, you get the issues with traditional zone dropping cover 3. There's holes in the under coverage. And some of the pressures you cannot pattern match because of who is dropping where. That's because you have a D-end outside backer again, trying to cover a slot receiver, and you don't want to play man match or zone match principles because it creates a mismatch. The only way to combat these issues is to switch responsibilities of the blitz, but sometimes it takes away from the effectiveness of the blitz. For example, you're trying to bring a guy from the field, play cover 3. Now you're having to walk one of your backers out of the box so the end can just drop over the ball, and it loses its effectiveness. At that point, you're just like, why am I even doing this? And these matchup issues are exacerbated with certain types of players at higher levels. For example, you have Khalil Mack, dominant pass rusher, fantastic, but I don't want him covering vertical routes by Devontae Adams. For my money, not something I want to do. Traditional fire zones are out because you're playing man-to-man and you don't really want to be stuck in that. You want to have extra coverage. But if you're running creepers and you're playing spot drops, you're allowing big windows for quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers to throw into, and he will find it. Also not a winning business model. So what do? Stop blitzing? Well, some people say yes. My answer, hell no. You split the difference. And that's why you run bonus fire zones. When you first look at the pressure, you know it's not a fire zone because you only see 4 rushers. And I would forgive you for mistaking them as a creeper because I know I did for many, many years. What the bonus fire zone pressures do is you play that match coverage underneath. You're playing fire zone coverage, 3 under, right? And then you take one player and you stick him wherever you want him to mitigate the issues of fire zone that we've talked about. Hence why they're called a bonus dropper. It's like the opposite of box 1 defense in basketball. Think of it as like you're playing Madden and you just take control of the D end and you just like use or drop him in just a spot while everybody else is playing. That's kind of what it is. I know it sounds stupid and silly and you might be like, what are you talking about? But that's the way I envision it, for better or for worse. With this, you get the best of all the worlds. You get the pressure pattern you want with tighter coverage underneath than you would with the zone dropping creepers, but you get to mitigate some of the issues that you have when you're running fire zones. And we will see some of those directly and how they're affected by when you have the bonus dropper. All right, let's get into the rules for whip fire zone. This pressure is run from the weak side versus 2 backs and 3-by-1 and to the running back and 2-by-2. However, these are camp rules, meaning they're taught during fall camp, spring ball if you're in college, OTAs if you're in the pros. You have to start somewhere, but a lot of the times they'll be game planned, especially if the offense is running a lot to the tight end at a 2-by-2. You don't want to be blitzing to the back if you got a tight end and they're going to run 1 back power to you or something like that, although the defense does handle that pretty well. But you don't want your nose tackle crossing face and having 1 D lineman and a guy blitzing. Not great. So I'm going to show you how Vic Fangio teaches the pressure using his rules. I know there's a lot of variations, but this is straight from Vic. To execute the pressure, the defense will make a left or right call to communicate where the pressure is coming from. And the players are taught their responsibility by whether they are to or away from the call. That's important to remember. All right, let's start with the linebackers. If they're to the call, they're going to rush the B gap. If they are away from the call, they will drop. We'll get into their responsibilities when we get into coverage. Just know they drop. Again, the weak linebacker will go versus 2 backs and 3-by-1. And the linebacker to the running back will go versus 2-by-2, according to the base way of teaching. On occasion, and we don't really see this, the rushing linebacker can make a me call, which means he's going to rush off the edge, and so the defensive end can spike. I haven't really seen that, but it's there. All right, let's talk defensive ends. The defensive end to the call, where the blitz is coming from, will become a 9 technique and contain rush unless they hear that me call. They're forcing everything inside. You want to push the ball back to the blitzer. The D end away from the call will play their gap versus the run and become the bonus hook dropper versus pass. More on that later. All right, D tackles. 1 will align in a 3 technique to the tight end and a G or 2I or whatever you want to call that 1 technique inside the guard away from the tight end. If they are to the call side where the blitz is coming from, they will rip in the A gap and cross center on back blocks and guard pulls, and they will eventually cross face to balance out the rush on pass. Away from the call, they will do what is commonly referred to as copping or contain on pass, crossing all double teams. All right, now let's talk coverage. As I've mentioned, the coverage is a hybrid of cover 3 weak, or some people call cover 6, and the Fangio guys call it cover 9. And then for this, they just call it fire zone coverage. But for them, it's weak side rotation cover 3. The nickel will play force versus run and seam flat versus pass, meaning they will take the 2 in the vertical or out, seam or flat, and squeeze him back inside if 2 goes inside. The weak safety will play the same technique as the nickel to 2-by-2, and versus 3-by-1, he'll basically take the running back out, but if he blocks or goes strong, he will look front side to take the first crosser. And the Bears are so athletic in some of these plays, you'll see them take deep over routes. Not something I would teach at the high school level or college level unless you got a good athlete. The corners, it says tight thirds, but it's basically man-to-man for all intents and purposes. So far, everything is just like playing match cover 3 in fire zone. Here's where it differentiates, and this is where it becomes interesting, is how the dropping inside backer, the backer not blitzing, and the DN who's dropping will basically differentiate between the creeper and fire zone world. Again, Fangio calls this fire zone, but it's not what you would normally know as fire zone. Okay, versus 2x2, the dropping inside linebacker plays his cover 9 technique, which you will see when we get to the film. He's going to provide help on quick routes by 2 and leverage a fast 3 to the flat by a running back, meaning the nickel or the weak safety will not come off if the back swings. I know a lot of match 3 coverages do that. They're not going to do this. They do not teach it that way. You stay on your vertical and out. You got them. We're going to leverage with the DN and the inside backer. The dropping DN will do the same thing as the inside linebacker versus 2x2, but get a little less depth. Now that's by rule, but a lot of the time they end up getting on the same plane. But it's not your grandfather's cover 3 drops where they're dropping out at 12 to 15 yards. I mean, they are sitting 8 to 10 yards, maybe. Some of these DNs, especially the guys you can tell don't do it much, they're dropping them like 5 yards. And you'll see on the film when we get to it. Again, he's looking for quick inside routes by 2 to his side. Shouldn't really have to worry about the running back in 2x2 because he's away from him by rule. Again, game plans can change this, but we're blitzing to the back, so the DN dropping will be away from the back. So unless they do like a fake stretch and he goes out to the flat, or they flip the back at the last second and the defense can't reload the pressure, he'll be away. All right, here's clip 1. Here's a clip of whip fire zone. Let's just focus on the pass coverage. Last year versus the Rams. The corner of the field plays loose man on 1, and the nickel is playing seam flat on 2, playing outside leverage and taking him on all vertical and outs against seam flat. The corner in the boundary is playing press man, and the weak safety plays the same technique as the nickel. The Mike will drop into the boundary, hook, looking to play inside routes by 2 to check down to the running back, and the field side DN will execute the same technique. Now, versus 3x1, this is where the call really springs to life. You can run it versus 2x2. It's great. Nothing wrong with it. But versus 3x1, it's fantastic. So much so that a lot of coaches that run this defense will use it as a trips check. They will play, and I know the Bears did this, they'll play cover 1 to 2x2, but if they get 3x1, boom, they're checking whip fire zone. The dropping backer is going to play 3 receiver hook like fire zones. He's going to play inside out on number 3 unless he goes on a shallow route across the formation. Because the nickel has the 2 out in vertical, this is what causes fire zone problems. You have a nickel playing outside of 2. You have a hot 3 player, or there's a million names for it, a guy inside of 3. You have nobody outside of 3. So stick routes, simple RPOs, quick passes, ate up fire zone coverage. And that's why a lot of people got away from it. But enter the bonus dropper. In bonus fire zone, that dropper that's not usually there in fire zone, he's going to collision number 3 and sit in the stick hot window between 2 and 3, and he will take 3 to the flat. And that is so the 3 receiver player can stay heavy inside, taking those benders and whatnot. Without that bonus dropper, it's impossible to defend. The nickel cannot play 2 and 3 both coming out at the same time. It's impossible. And teams got really good at throwing that stuff versus fire zone. Now, you may be looking at this and be like, I thought this was a creeper. Isn't that what the creepers do? And again, I thought the same thing. But the issue with some of the creepers is that because you have the extra dropper, they have equal responsibility most of the time. So what happens? The drops get wider. The holes get more pronounced underneath. With bonus fire zone, you're clamping on the receivers, but then you're having that bonus guy get in between them. And that's what opens up the holes, is when you distribute the drops more evenly, receivers are able to find underneath holes, as we've talked about, and you will see. Now, some teams major in these creepers, they spend a lot of time on it. But this is really great if you're a team that plays some 3 deep, that plays some fire zone, plays some man free. It takes less reps, it takes less teaching time. I know in a lot of these teams that run this stuff, how they coach their outside backers and what they tell them in creepers. Bonus fire zone's a lot easier. Like I said, collision 3, playing his outside shoulder, take him in the flat. They're not having to take these long drops, which means they don't have to practice it. And when you're in the NFL and you have Khalil Mack, and I know I'm going to use him a bunch because we're going to see a bunch of Bears film, he's paid a lot of money to rush the passer. There's not a lot of indie time in the NFL, individual time for the coaches to work their positions. So for the little precious time they get, I guarantee you the outside backers coach, DN's coach for Mac doesn't want to spend that time doing all these complicated deep drops. It just doesn't make any sense. Now you can tell him, hey, drop right here, beat the crap out of 3, take him to the flat if he goes. If he doesn't, hang out, look for the ball, you're extra. Let's get off the field. Here are a few clips. Here are the Rams playing the Seahawks last year. Watch the DN collision number 3, disrupt the timing, then drop outside of him, taking away the quick throws that would hurt fire zones. Now the Seahawks go for a big gain on this play because the corner Darius Williams bites on the double move, but the rest of the coverage is intact, and you can see how it plays out. Here are a few clips from Dave Aranda's Wisconsin-era teams. Here you can see the number 3 receiver work inside, then back out. The quarterback from Rutgers thinks he can fit it in there. The Wisconsin outside linebacker and current Jacksonville Jaguar, Joe Schobert, makes the play on the ball. Now you can see outside linebacker number 36 overdrop the number 3 receiver, meaning he is going to drop past him, pass him back inside to the Mike linebacker, and get in the throwing window for number 2. Here's a clip of the 2018 Bears running the call, and you can see why the coverage is good versus slide boot teams that bring the tight end back across when they fake the run. The backers actually get faked out and don't execute the pressure, but 94 Leonard Floyd does a great job of picking up the tight end. If this was a regular fire zone coverage, the overhang who was playing the wheel of 2 would be in conflict and have to pick it up late. Or more than likely, the inside linebacker who got fooled on the play action would have to redirect and pick it up. Neither scenario is likely, and you can see why this is a good call to combat these type of plays. Sometimes the bonus dropper can even get a little lucky, although we all know being in the right spot helps us with this. Corner 23, Kyle Fuller breaks on the ball and tips it, allowing the bonus dropper, Leonard Floyd, to grab it and go to the house. So you might be asking, why is whip fire zone in particular so good? I know the coverage part, but why this particular pressure pattern? Why do you love it so much, and why do you love it versus 3-by-1? That's because in passing situations, the running back is most often set away from the trips where the blitz is coming from. And with a too high look versus trips, you're most likely going to get the slide to the mic, to the field, so the running back is on the wheel. With the linebacker on the running back one-on-one, it will speed up the quarterback's internal clock because he knows the running back is on a linebacker and he's rushing from depth. If the offense decides to flare the back and only block with 5, which is also known as scat protection, and still slide to the field, which is the most common thing in the NFL, the offense can't block the pressure. The guard has to step up with the G slanting inside. The offensive tackle will block the D end and no one is left for the backer. This happens sometimes when the back is hot. They just lose the blitzer and they're trying to get in their route. They don't see him and he comes free. If the offense full slides to the field, now there's nobody on the D end. So the tackle steps down, he picks up the backer, and is scot-free. The only way the offense can pick this up is the full slide into the boundary, which is very rare. They could also stay in their half slide and the guard would bump down, make sure the center secures the nose tackle, and then comes back out to get the inside linebacker. However, most of the time, if that inside linebacker's coming full speed, he'd be past the guard by the time you could pick him up. In summary, as my friend Brian Vaughn, aka Blitzology, said when doing an article on the same pressure, and I will put a link in the description, very few traditional 4-man pass rushes can isolate a running back with a full speed rusher while wasting 4 offensive linemen on 2 defensive tackles. The resource allocation is a major victory for the defense. 6 blockers versus 4 rushers while still creating quick, efficient pressure, backstopped with a 7-man drop coverage. All right, so let's look at these scenarios. Let's start with the offense deciding to run scat protection, releasing the back. As I've mentioned before, this is dangerous, and here are some clips of this happening with the defensive ends free. Here are the 2011 San Francisco 49ers coordinated by Vic Fangio. The Lions are in 2-by-2 with the running back and the tight end to the same side. They release 5 out into the route. The O-line sees Ray McDonald slant inside and Navarro loop around to blitz. The tackle squeezes down, but he lets the 55 Ahmad Brooks go. Same thing on this play from the 2013 Chargers against the Eagles. This time, Eric Weddle blitzes, leaving a guy named Dwight Freeney scot-free. Vic is able to get the ball out fast to the running back, but he doesn't see Jaleel Adai coming full speed, and he smacks the running back. Almost identical play last year with the Rams against the Redskins, with Jordan Fuller making the play. This time in a 2x2 formation. Another great part about the bonus fire zone, and even creepers, is that because there are enough guys in the under coverage, edge rushers do not have to peel with swings from the back. In most pressure scenarios, you're not too excited when the offense runs flares with the running back because a DN has to cover them. This is most often seen in man-to-man situations. However, in this case, you're licking your chops. If the offense flares the back, especially weak, they can't block the pressure unless they slide to it like I mentioned, which most teams won't. And this is what happens. You got a free runner with great coverage. Whip is also great versus empty. A lot of teams have this as an empty check, even guys like Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, who only run the pressure versus empty sets. They do not carry it against non-empty formations. Here the Cardinals see the mugged Mike and a full slide to the field, letting the boundary DN go. They end up sliding to a DN and an inside linebacker who are both dropping. Whoops. The quarterback ends up throwing it to Ronaldo Hill, who picks it and takes it to the house. The next scenario you're going to see is the inside linebackers coming free. Here's a couple clips where the guard locks on the D tackle, the offensive tackle locks on the end, and the inside linebacker is free. What I found interesting was when the Bears got free, it was their linebacker, but when the Rams were unblocked, it was usually the D end. Here's another clip. You can see the DN is actually able to take the running back out of the backfield with ease. And I don't think fire zones could easily handle 4 strong to one side like this. Here's another clip. Again, this would be almost impossible in typical fire zone coverage with 3 going to the flat. The nickel would have to come off, and then the next dropper would have to run to cover number 2. Or the person on number 3 who was in the box would be very late to the flat, ensuring an easy completion. Here are 2 clips of the inside linebacker getting free and the quarterback throwing it to the running back, where either the QB's timing was sped up by the blitzer or the quarterback was able to get the ball out on time, but the weak safety coming down was able to make a great play, like we saw a few clips ago. Okay, here are some clips of inside linebackers owning running backs, one of my favorite things. Here's all-world inside linebacker Patrick Willis getting one-on-one with a full head of steam, and I'm guessing you can figure out who will win. Again, the bonus dropper takes 3 to the flat, and the coverage is excellent. This clip is actually a snap of whip fire zone, but a true fire zone with a 5-man rush. You can see the coverage differences here with no one outside of 3. Bears linebacker Danny Trevathan was able to bull rush the running back into Russell Wilson's lap, forcing an attempted escape with a stumble sack in a crucial situation. Here's another 2-minute clip where Danny Trevathan gets a one-on-one with Christian McCaffrey and is able to bull rush him and shed late, hitting Cam Newton. The next 2 clips are official gold-nutted stud Navarro Bowman getting one-on-one with the running back. The first clip is Bowman just destroying the back into Sam Bradford. The second clip, the back does a little better, but after the first hit, Bowman is able to shrug the back off and sack the quarterback. Sometimes because the defense tips off that the pressure is coming or the nose crosses face fast, and gives away that the backer's coming, or possibly the offense just gets it right and picks it up. In this case, now the linebacker is one-on-one with the guard, which even if you're Navarro Bowman, this is a good thing. Here is Bowman executing a spin move, which most defensive ends would be jealous of, and forces the fumble. As I mentioned, whip fire zone is good versus empty, so here's a few snaps. It's very difficult to block if the nose does not cross face too early or the linebacker doesn't show. And some teams will do this if they think they can trick the offense into going to full slide to let the DN get free, but he has a further path and he is coming from a dead stop where if the linebacker times it up, he can get free. So not only is he moving quicker on the snap of the ball, he's closer. There's the last two clips. The offense picks up yards, but you can see the free rusher with only a 4-man rush, which would not happen if the defense just brought the 4 declared rusher with their hand down. Not everything is about sacks and strips and scooping scores. Obviously, that's what you want, but affecting the quarterback can be just as effective getting off the field. Whip fire zone is also good versus plays where the offense anticipates the defense playing base technique, either running upfield for a draw or sucking up for play action. Whip allows you to bring the players the offense normally wouldn't account for and drop players, which the offense is anticipating rushing. So like Brian said, they're wasting their people. And the lateral slanting can create havoc. Here's Patrick Willis bossing the left guard to make a TFL on a draw play. The guard is anticipating that someone would run upfield, but Willis goes right through him and into the running back. And if I'm being honest, I really love these old clips. Here's another draw play where the slanting line and the off linebacker who is not going is able to work in and make the play. Whip is also good for draw because the bonus dropper is coming in from the line of scrimmage, so he won't get much depth as a linebacker who aligns off the ball. Here's another example of the defense turning the tables on the offense. The Titans here pull a guard and try to fool the Chargers with play action. Chargers linebacker 52 Reggie Walker rushes the spot where the guard pulled from. And as Jake Locker is executing his fake, Walker's able to apply direct pressure on him and get the sack. Here's another snap of play action against the Rams last year. The Pats actually block it up, but the Rams cover down with man-tight principles, make him hold the ball, and they converge on Jared Stidham for the sack. Okay, here's an all-out shit show from BYU during the 2013 season that leads to a sack, with the quarterback trying to throw an out without the receiver looking back, and a full-speed linebacker breathing down his neck. Again, you're accelerating the clock. All right, let's talk about the run game. Whip can also be effective versus the run, especially on run plays away from the blitzer. The D-line slants to the play, and you have a hard-charging inside linebacker who has the freedom to bend hard inside, coming 100 miles an hour. It's also good into gap runs because it forces doubles to come off against plays like power and duo. I prefer to slant into plays and blitz away from them because it is harder to wash a D-line that is moving with the play. On the back and down blocks, you're able to cross face, and it makes the ball wind all the way back. Here you can see that exact scenario play out. Here's another clip from 2011 Stanford, coordinated by Jason Tarver and Derek Mason. Apologies for the grainy footage, but I do love this play, so I had to put it on. On this play, the same thing happens, but the 3 technique slanting cuts off the back forcing him to cut back into the blitzer. Whip can also be good blitzing into plays as long as the D tackle doesn't cross face of the center on the run. The backer can puncture the B gap, which is what a lot of teams like to do if they want to try to create penetration into a zone play. You see that a lot with Don Brown, with Georgia, North Carolina. This is a preferred method for them to try to get a TFL on zone. Here it works particularly well because Oregon is running triple option. The DN to the field sits. The quarterback is reading him, which is a give read, and he hands the ball off into the trash, and you can see the defense makes a great play. Here's another snap of zone to a two-man surface against my poor alma mater for graduate school and former employer. This game was ugly, 57-3. I don't like to talk about it. As I mentioned, it's better to run whip where the guard is pulling from, but these next two clips are actually into power. The blitzers come with authority and dent the play. Okay, these next three clips are bonus plays. They're plays where the offense actually blocked the blitz, but the coverage was good and the defense ended up getting home or picking the ball off. The Rams either switch it up on this play or it's a bust and the linebacker makes the defensive tackle right. Either way, the Cowboys block it pretty well, but the coverage is exceptional. There aren't many pressures where you can cover four receivers strong with 3-layer horizontal and vertical stretches. The Rams do a fantastic job covering and force Prescott to hold the ball and get the sack. Here's another coverage sack by the Rams. The bonus dropper covers the back out of the backfield. Everyone else is locked down, and Stidham has to hold the ball, leading to a sack. Here, the Rams execute a great edge rush, as well as the nose getting lost in the protection. Although the center whiffs, it's not his fault. The guard should have gone with the nose, the back should have the inside backer, and the tackle should have the D end. Although one-on-ones with the linebacker is not preferred, I can tell you that that is a lot more favorable than a running back on a nose tackle. The guard tries to pick up the linebacker for some reason in the center, almost gets back in time after everything disappears on his side. But the Rams sack Kyler Murray and force a fumble. Okay, here's the last clip. Here are the Vikings against the Bears. I believe they ID the pressure and call it out and pick it up. We'll start with the coverage first, though. The Bears' weak hook defender executes the 3-up-3 technique, carrying the vertical of 3 all the way down the field. And the weak safety actually starts to execute what he does in cover 9, their cover 3 weak, which means on a lot of plays, the will linebacker takes the running back and the weak safety will poach 3 in the verticals. Hint, 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 another video coming along the line. The issue here is the will's blitzing, so the weak safety has to come down and play the running back. You can see the safety kind of realize his mistake halfway through the play and wheel back down to the running back. Now into the protection, the Vikings slide to the pressure and pick it up, but sometimes the defense wins one-on-one and makes the play. I personally like this look better where the 3 technique is slanting to the A gap and then crosses another gap if it's passed, but some don't like it because it requires the G on the other side to cross 2 gaps and contain, which I certainly understand. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, put them in the comment section below. I do read them and I will respond. Also, if you want to chat about this more on Twitter, go to my Twitter account at Coach Vass. Whenever I put something out, I usually tweet about it, and the tweet that is attached to the video ends up being kind of a de facto discussion thread. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you get notifications when the next video comes out. Once again, thanks for watching, and always remember, the quarterback can't see with tears in his eyes.